For an interview on cyber insurance and how small businesses can protect themselves against cyber attacks, please welcome the SVP of Security Innovation at MasterCard, Jonathan Anastasia, and the VP and Global Product Owner Cyber at HSB, Timothy Zielman. Moderated by the SVP of Product Optimization at MasterCard, Paul Truman.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the session. My name is Paul Truman, and I'm the Senior Vice President in the Cyber Intelligence team at MasterCard, and I'm also responsible for the Trust Center. So today we're going to talk about cyber insurance. Now, every one of us has insurance. We have car insurance, we have home insurance, and we will have business insurance. And what we're covering there probably is the normal things: flood, fire, and theft. I don't know if you've heard much about cyber yet or cyber insurance, but you should. Do you know that a cyber attack now occurs every 20 seconds? And small, medium enterprise businesses are becoming a real target. In fact, the odds are that your business is likely to become a victim of cybercrime far greater than the likelihood of you experience a loss due to flood or fire. So with that sobering thought, we're going to talk a little bit with two leading experts in this area around what cyber insurance is, how it can help protect your business, and how employing good cybersecurity practices can help reduce your risk and costs. So with no more ado, I'm delighted to welcome Jonathan Anastasia, who is Senior Vice President of Security Innovation at MasterCard, and Tim Zielman, who is the Vice President and Global Product Owner for Cybersecurity at HSB. Welcome to both of you. And let's dive into cyber insurance and understand the necessities for small business to consider. So maybe, Tim, if I can start with you. Can you tell me what is the current state of cyber attacks in general, and specifically around small and medium-sized businesses?
Yeah. Thanks very much. So frankly, the current state of cyber attacks for businesses in general and small businesses in particular is fairly rapidly evolving. As recently as a couple of years ago, what we were seeing was primarily breaches of personal information, whether they were sophisticated thefts of credit cards and medical information by criminal gangs or accidental releases of that kind of information. That's what dominated cyber losses as recently as a couple of years ago. But things have really changed within the last couple of years. And what has driven that change has been the rise of ransomware. So ransomware is a particular kind of malware infection that infects a device or a system and a number of devices, typically encrypts the data and systems, and then demands money in response, often cryptocurrency, Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency. It takes, that's the typical scenario. It takes other forms, but that's basically the idea with ransomware. And starting maybe in 2018, 2019, ransomware in all its varieties came to dominate our loss experience. And I think that's pretty typical of small business. We still see plenty of those breach of personal information claims, but they've now taken a second place to ransomware. And to a certain extent, we also see various kinds of business fraud as well. So it's a shifting landscape. As small businesses become more digital, they become more vulnerable to these kinds of attacks.
I think ransomware, you're right, is the all-pervading kind of attack that's affecting small businesses. But Jonathan, can you give us a kind of feel for, why do you think that is? And also, do you have a view on how well prepared small businesses generally are against cyber threats?
Thanks, Paul. So I think the issue here with small businesses is that they typically think they're too small to be an actual target. And that's just not the case. In fact, criminals will purposely look for those small enterprises because they know they're not going to have the security measures in place. And the statistics behind this bear it out. So more than half of the data breaches that we've seen are targeted with small businesses. And unfortunately, 60% of these small businesses within 6 months of having that data breach go out of business. When we start digging a little bit deeper, about 40+% of these small businesses have no cybersecurity measures in place to protect their system. Now, some of this may just be that they're very busy just trying to keep the shop up and running. But unfortunately, we see that they don't prioritize cybersecurity and they don't have the education and training necessary to really understand what the risks are and how to protect themselves against the threats.
Well, that's true. And I think that's a part of the reason we set up the Trust Center, wasn't it? To be able to give business owners the chance to be able to look at the information, understand what they can do to help themselves. Because it's not difficult, it's just different, and it's probably not their passion point, unless, of course, they're running a small business that's in IT. So in terms of, when you think about protecting your business against attacks, what sort of things can you do?
So
Jonathan.
you hit on it from an education point of view, Paul, with the Trust Center. And there are some just basic building blocks of whether we're talking about Wi-Fi passwords, establishing your firewalls, limiting administrative rights. But then from that, again, it is the base of education, it's understanding. And I'd recommend visiting the MasterCard Trust Center. There's educational tools, resources, tools, learnings. So small businesses can understand what they need to put in place to be better protected in this ecosystem.
Brilliant. Thank you. Tim, anything to add?
Yeah, I would say one thing when you think about preparing for a cyber attack, one of the things you can't underestimate is the importance of employees and having employees that are somewhat sophisticated and knowledgeable about cybersecurity. The best technical cybersecurity is only as strong as its weakest link, and that weakest link is often a gullible employee who can be tricked into disclosing credentials or allowing access when he or she shouldn't. Just recently we saw a small manufacturer of specialty parts and components be infected with a ransomware strain. Fortunately, they had been backing up, so they didn't pay the ransom, but they still suffered significant damage to systems and were down for several days while they were recovering from this. The forensic investigator who came in afterwards concluded, based on basically a lack of other evidence, that this was probably caused by an employee that was kind of carelessly browsing the web at work and had inadvertently downloaded malware, but it could have just as easily been a phishing email or something like that, where gullible, unsophisticated employees are preyed upon. In this case, we were able to help the business recover by paying for IT costs, costs of business downtime, that sort of thing. But it goes back to that point that often, it's a gullible, unsophisticated, uneducated employee that can be the weak link in a cybersecurity of a small business.
Right. So you've got to think about the general health of how you look after your business, and you've also got to think about making sure your employees are trained against it. That's great advice. So if we're going to talk about cyber insurance, and having two experts on, it's going to be quite easy to ask. The next question is, what should good policies look like if you were thinking about cyber insurance?
Yeah, so I'll group it. A modern cyber insurance policy is a smorgasbord, a long menu of lots of different cyber coverage, lots of different coverage elements tied together kind of loosely by some connection with computers or the internet or connectivity. But I think you can understand it by broadly grouping that long list into a couple different kinds of coverage. One is data breach. So coverage is related to the breach of personal information, and they'll help you with the compliance aspects, complying with local regulatory rules around breaches of personal information, as well as with reputational risks associated with that kind of an event. The second sort of bucket that I would mention would be coverages related to attacks and extortion. So hacking events, malware infections, ransomware and cyber extortion, like we just discussed a few minutes ago, helping you recover with sort of the IT costs, the data recovery costs associated with something like that, as well as the business downtime you might experience after an event like that, and the reputational impacts of something like that as well. The third category that I would mention is fraud. Criminals can be incredibly creative in tricking and deceiving businesses into sending money and valuable goods to fraudulent destinations, or hacking into their systems, changing data in order to get payments to flow to fraudulent destinations. And this bucket of coverages will cover those various kinds of fraud scenarios in order to make the insured whole. And then the final category I would point to would be what we think of in the insurance industry as liability or third-party coverages, basically coverages that help protect an insured, a policyholder, from various sorts of cyber-related lawsuits it might see. So it could be government actions after a breach of personal information. It could be a class action that you face after a breach of personal information. It could be a lawsuit from someone who is harmed by your poor security. It could be a lawsuit from someone who was injured by someone you published carelessly on the internet. But in order to kind of evaluate in terms of coverage offering a cyber insurance policy, I would look at kind of those four categories and make sure that they're well covered.
Okay, so there's a lot in there. So I just want to unpack it a little bit and give people kind of, when you think about insurance, you kind of know what you're covered for. When you get a car, if you're covered for your loss or you're covered for the third party's loss. So what type of support should I expect from my cyber insurance provider? What 3-4 things should I be looking for?
Yeah. I think that it's a really good point because sure, insurance provides financial resources in order to help recover from an event, but at least as important as the financial resources, perhaps more important, are the relationships and services that a good cyber carrier can bring to you. And those basically fall into two categories. So, of course, you want a carrier that can help take care of you after you've had an event. So you want someone who can bring in the right resources to respond to the kind of event you've suffered, whether it's people that are specialists in recovering from a breach of personal information, know how to navigate the regulatory framework associated with that, do the right things in terms of notification and services afterwards, whether it's someone to help you, a specialty ransomware consultant or negotiator, but help you respond after the fact, including kind of defensive lawsuits to the kind of event that you suffer. The second category, you want a carrier that can bring you sort of pre-event services that you need, can help you prepare to assess your own cybersecurity, improve your cybersecurity posture, and connect you with the experts that can help you do those things as well.
Okay. So if I'm starting to think about my business and how I protect it, and I'm thinking about selecting a policy or coverage, how do I go around for it? How do I select it? What's the best way to do it, Tim?
Yeah, so I think there may be 3 points you need to consider when selecting a cyber policy. The one thing would be the right carrier. So you want to choose an insurance company that's a leader in the field, that is experienced in this area. You want to have the right, as with kind of any sort of insurance, you want to have the right limit, you want to have the right deductible, the right mix of coverages. Cyber insurance can be highly variable in that aspect. So what you need in terms of limit, deductible, coverage scope can be fairly widely depending on the industry that you're in, the size of your business, risk characteristics, something you yourself as a business have control over, and costs, what you're looking to spend in this area. And cyber insurance policies for small businesses can range from maybe a few $100s to several $1,000s. So there's quite a range. And I think choosing point number one, picking the right carrier is important with this, because the right carrier can help you with those decisions and navigating those the sorts of criteria that you need to consider in order to pick the right policy with the right limit and deductible and scope of coverage.
Okay. So Jonathan, I know you've been heavily involved in this area and working with Tim and the team. Can you tell me a little bit about where, if you're a small business, you're going to learn how to get protected and the sort of things you can do to help yourself?
No, thank you, Paul. And really, one of the things that is exciting, we just heard from Tim, is the depth of coverage and expertise that HSB has. And that's why MasterCard and HSB are excited to partner together to offer cybersecurity insurance policies. And one of the ways we're doing that is looking about how we can apply our tools at MasterCard. So through a risk recon cyber assessment, to understand the actual posture of a small business to help potentially reduce the premiums associated with that. It is a concept that we think will be useful for the SMEs to provide them the benefit of not just understanding what their cyber risks are, but also to reduce that cost if available. So they actually get a real view of what their proposed cyber risk is. Now, that is going to be available on the MasterCard Trust Center. I encourage everyone to go there to learn about it, to check it out, and if you need the opportunity, to purchase a cybersecurity insurance policy.
Okay, so you talked about a couple of things there. You talked about the fact that you worked with HSB to find a scalable solution that brings peace of mind insurance. But you're also saying that if they've done appropriate work and done some things to help themselves by, say, for example, using, and they can find on the Trust Center ideas about the risk recon assessment, they'll get a better understanding how, if they've run that on their business, that'll help them in terms of discounts or whatever else, or benefits when they're looking for insurance policies. Yeah.
Absolutely. You nailed it on the head, Paul.
All right. Brilliant. So look, guys, well, what I'm going to do is pass to both of you, kind of have your closing comments. Anything that you think that we've missed today or have missed in the questions you really want to get over to the people that are listening today?
So for myself, Paul, I think the main things for SMEs that the education, the tools that are necessary to help protect yourselves and protect your businesses, they exist and they're out there. And with MasterCard and with HSB and through the Trust Center, they're ready at your fingertips. And I encourage you to go and look and learn about them.
And I will just follow on with that. Throughout the history of cyber insurance, small businesses have been a somewhat underserved segment of the market. They need a special approach in terms of the kind of offering and kind of the ease of purchasing and understanding their cyber exposures, and that the package of educational resources and a simple and easy way to buy cyber insurance that MasterCard and HSB have put together here, I think, is exactly the sort of thing that small businesses need in order to meet their unique requirements.
Brilliant. That's a good session. So, guys, look, I think when I wrap up this, I think, when we talk about insurance, kind of no one ever thinks that they really want to do it. It's not, you don't get out of bed in the morning wanting to get insurance, but you do also realize it's a part of doing life, whether you're insuring your car or insuring your house. And hopefully by understanding the fact that the threat's changing and it's becoming significant, because it is easier to attack nowadays. It seems easier to attack small businesses than it is to attack bigger businesses or corporates. So if you're thinking about cyber insurance or starting to get concerned that you need to know more, do go to the Trust Center. There'll be a link at the end of this video to know more. I just want to say thank you very much, Tim and Jonathan, for a great session, and all the best.